Hello everyone, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy previous year questions analysis. So in this class, we will discuss and understand how to structure the previous year questions so that it will be helpful for you to frame a proper answer with a good structure so that it will help you score good marks in your mains examination. So the first question that we are going to start this discussion today is with the maritime security. Now maritime security is very important, particularly for a country like India, as we have a border of maritime borders of around 7,500 kilometers. So the first part of the question, it is asking what are the maritime security challenges that India is facing. See, this is a very straightforward question, so you just have to list out those maritime security challenges. And the second part of the question, discuss the organizational, technical, procedural initiatives taken to improve the maritime security. In the second part of the question, you have to write the organizational measures or the organizational initiatives and the technical initiatives and the procedural initiatives taken to improve the maritime security. Okay, so this question has two parts and you have to address both the parts and you have to write this answer in 150 words. So first, understand in the introduction itself you can define what exactly is the maritime security. Now maritime security is general term that used to define the protection of vessels, okay, commercial shipping vessels, both internally and externally. Now if you look at the Indian waters, we have territorial waters at first, territorial waters, and then contiguous zone, and exclusive economic zone. So protection of vessels internally and externally is called as maritime security. So generally the areas where the ships and maritime operations used to takes place is known as the maritime space. Okay, so we need to ensure protection of vessels and we need to ensure maritime security from threats like terrorism, piracy, robbery, illegal trafficking of goods and people, and illegal fishing and pollution. So these threats are both conventional and unconventional threats. So in the image you are seeing here, there are multiple maritime security challenges. So those challenges include military challenges, environmental, economic and political challenges. Now if we talk about the economic challenges specifically, it involves trade routes, safeguarding trade routes, smuggling, and living and non-living resources. It is also part of the economic challenges that maritime security has been facing. Now when we talk about smuggling, human trafficking, and drug trafficking, so recently drug trafficking vessel were also busted by the Narcotics Control Bureau, Coast Guard and Indian Navy in the Arabian Sea. So therefore in this context, the economic challenges are most crucial challenges that the maritime security space has been facing. Now after that, when we talk about the political challenges, so one such challenge is marking of territories. So there may be disputes. For example, we talk about the dispute between India and Sri Lanka over Kachativu. Okay, Kachativu dispute. So apart from that, the exploitation of resources and resources management. Now several Indian fishermen are in Pakistani jails because of various reasons. So that also includes exploitation of resources and lack of proper resource management. So this also comes under the one of the maritime security challenge. Now after that, we need to talk about the environmental challenges also. So environmental challenges involves the hurricanes, tsunamis, and recently the intensification of cyclones because of the climate change, and even the oil and chemical spillovers. So recently we have seen such a oil spill in Chennai. So apart from that, the humanitarian assistance and disaster relief in the region is very important, because particularly if you look at the Indian Navy, we call it as we wanted to become a blue water navy, and we very often come across the word called net security provider. So Indian Navy or India in the region is called as net security provider. So however, we still facing a lot of challenges from the dominance of Chinese vessels in the Indian Ocean. So particularly China, through the string of pearls policy, has been trying to encircle India. Okay, so it has developed various ports in Sri Lanka, Hambantota port, and Gwadar port in Pakistan, right? So therefore it has been trying to encircle India and creating a lot of maritime security challenges for India. So since India is also sandwiched between two largest drug producing regions in the world, so both are the Gulf, the Crescent, the Golden Crescent, and the Golden Triangle. So that also creating a lot of challenges in terms of the drug trafficking issues. So after that, there are several military challenges also. So military challenges involves the terrorist activities. So for example, if you look at the Mumbai terror attacks that took place in 2008, so they also born from the sea, Arabian Sea, okay, Pakistani based terrorist groups. So therefore that involves several conventional and unconventional threats. So particularly we need to talk about terrorism. Okay, so with a quick glance, these are the major maritime security challenges. Now after that, we will try and discuss these maritime security challenges in a detailed manner. So if you look at the maritime boundaries, India has around 7,000 kilometers long maritime border. Okay, so in fact India has been sharing this such a huge maritime boundary with around 7 nations. Okay, so apart from this, the major instruments of maritime security protects maritime security. So protection of territorial sovereignty of nation from possible marine threats. So possible marine threats that involves terrorist activities and insurgency. So all these things. So maritime security main objective is protection of territorial sovereignty and national integrity. Now firstly, understand few challenges listed here. So first challenge is control of choke points. So what are these choke points? So we talk about the Malacca Strait. So Malacca Strait is also known as a choke point. So apart from that, there are other several choke points. So India, which is equally remote from most of these choke points. So India is located remotely from these choke points. So therefore, India's around 95% of external trade is through seas. So therefore, in this context, it is very important for India to protect its commercial shipping. So therefore, since it is located far from these choke points, it significantly increases the security issues for Indian commercial vessels. So in this context, India will significantly contributing to the security of this vast maritime zone. Okay, so this is particularly necessary for defense of Indian maritime interests. Since India has been trying to become a maritime superpower or the net security provider, it is very important for India to have a greater control over these maritime choke points. Okay, so that could have several geopolitical and geostrategic interests. So after that, we need to mention an example of Iran-Iraq war that took place in the year 1980s. Okay, so this particular war has highlighted the dangers to Indian energy imports through the Strait of Hormuz. So where the Strait of Hormuz is located, I hope you all know about the Persian Gulf. Okay, so the Persian Gulf will be linked with the Arabian Sea, would be linked with the Arabian Sea through the Strait of Hormuz. So since 85% of our imports, oil imports are imported from other countries, it is very important for India to protect these shipping routes. So therefore, it ensures India's energy security. Okay. Energy security. Now, apart from that, both old and novel threats, that means both conventional and unconventional threats, can affect the India's maritime interests. And apart from that, the Indian Ocean region have historically been susceptible to these maritime threats. Now, after that, we need to talk about the regional uncertainty, whether it is Sri Lanka, Pakistan, even a recent conflict between Israel and the Gaza. So all these things, there was also a news that Indian vessel or Indian-based vessel is being captured by the fighters in Yemen. Houthi fighters captured Indian-based vessel in the Arabian Sea. So therefore, in this context, particularly because of the regional uncertainty, the Indian Ocean region's maritime security is made more challenging by unpredictability in Somalia, Yemen, Iran, and other nations. So if you look at these countries, Somalia is particularly known for the maritime piracy. Okay, so therefore in this context, anti-piracy activities are very important. Yemen is also facing a lot of conflicts, civil war and internal crisis, and Iran is also having a conflictual relationship with the West. So in this context, because of regional uncertainty, it also poses significant maritime security threats. So the next major challenge we need to discuss is about the trafficking. So trafficking involves both human trafficking and drug trafficking. So they are one of the most challenging issues when it comes to the maritime security. For example, as I have already told you that India is lies between Golden Triangle and the Golden Crescent. So these are the areas which produce the largest amount of drugs in the world. Since India is located between these two largest drug producing regions, so trafficking instances are also posing a significant maritime security threats. Okay, so apart from that, there's also instances like gun running, human trafficking, terrorist attacks, or the so all other factors have been significantly affecting India's maritime security. So in this context, India has come up with several maritime security initiatives. So what are those initiatives? Firstly, we need to talk about the Sagar. Sagar is security and growth for all in the region. So this is Project Sagar. Now, Project Sagar has been launched in line with the the neighborhood first policy. We already have the neighborhood first policy, and Sagar is also launched in this context. So it is particularly aimed at improving the relations between all of our maritime neighbors. For example, Sri Lanka is a maritime neighbor, Indonesia, Iran, and other West Asian countries. So all those part of the our extended neighborhood and beyond our neighborhood. Okay, so and that also Sagar is also envisioned at or aimed at further enhancing the economic and security relations with all our neighbors. So India also launched Project Mausam. So what does this Project Mausam means? So it is focused on, or it is aimed at re-establishing connections and communication channels between the nations which surrounds all the Indian Ocean. So after that, so India has also launched the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium. So Indian Ocean Naval Symposium generally connects all the littoral states in the Indian Ocean. Okay, all the navies of the littoral ocean, so that they can cooperate and collaborate on the maritime issues. So after that, the Indian Ocean Rim Association. So this is also launched on the similar lines of Indian Ocean Naval Symposium. So that particularly addresses the maritime concerns and close collaboration with all Indian Ocean Rim Association countries. Okay, so in both Indian Ocean Naval Symposium and Indian Ocean Rim Association, so India has been maintaining the leadership role. So after that, we also know about the Sagarmala initiative. Sagarmala initiative was launched by the government. Okay, so this is particularly aimed at developing India's coastline, and this will have a lot of ports, and this is particularly focuses on the port-led development in India. Port-led development in India. So after that, there should be a proper way forward also, because we have talked about the challenges. So when we mention challenges, we need to mention a proper way forward or a suggestions. So firstly, regional maritime security framework has to be brought in. So this regional security framework will address the existing issues, so they encompassing security or any other issues in the Indian Ocean region. Okay, so therefore it must be established regional maritime security framework. Secondly, developing close ties with the nations facing a crisis. For example, as we have already discussed, those countries like Iran and Yemen, Sri Lanka, so those countries which are facing a lot of crisis situation, so therefore a close cooperation is actually needed. So therefore for the unhindered and unrestricted movement of Indian trade and shipping to support the ongoing economic development, for example with the countries like Saudi Arabia and Egypt. And apart from that, we need to focus on increasing the maritime exchanges between the all the littoral states, so that we will be well prepared with dealing with any sort of eventuality. So that involves conducting military drills, cultural encounters, etc. Okay, so information exchanges and intelligence sharing is also one of the important component in the maritime security. Okay, so therefore to intercept and prosecute vessels and individuals who involved in the illegal activity in the Indian Ocean region or in any maritime space, information exchange and intelligence sharing will be a very useful tool. So after that, the common operational grid should also be established or launched by the government and all the countries in the littoral countries. So a common operational grid between the littoral nations is necessary for the effective management of the maritime domain, so particularly within the complicated region like the Indian Ocean region. Now if you look at the Indian Ocean region, it has been becoming more and more complex and complicated, particularly because of the evolving Indo-Pacific as a geostrategic construct, and also Chinese inroads into the Indian Ocean region, and several other countries, and illegal, unregulated, and the fishing activities that are taking place in the Indian Ocean region. So these are the measures that should be taken to ensure the maritime security. For a country like India with a huge maritime space, it is very important that India should maintain the proper maritime security protocols in place. For example, India would have avoided the terrorist attack in Mumbai, so if we have a proper and robust maritime space. So therefore in this context, the key focus will be on ensuring or strengthening the maritime space and protecting, enhancing the maritime security and protecting the maritime space. So the next question that we're going to discuss is about the economic growth and employment creation, the relationship between the economic growth and employment creation. So the question is, economic growth in the recent past has been led by increase in the labor activity. So due to increase in the labor activity, there has been a substantial rise in the economic activity. So we need to explain this statement, how increase in the labor productivity or the labor activity has given fillip to the economic growth and suggests growth patterns that led to the creation of more jobs without compromising the labor productivity. Okay, so how can we create more jobs so that would not compromise the labor productivity, the existing labor productivity? Now, so if you look at the International Labour Organization predictions, the ILO, so labor productivity, what does labor productivity exactly means? So it has International Labour Organization has defined labor productivity that represents total volume of output. So what is output? So it is measured in terms of the GDP and the produced per unit of labor. So the total amount of output produced per unit of labor. So this is called as a labor productivity. Now, in the produced per unit of labor means that it is measured in terms of number of employed persons or work hours they have worked. Okay, so during a given reference period. So secondly, in the recent past, India has witnessed economic growth driven by increase in the labor activity. So no doubt this is itself given in the question, that India's economic activity is fueled by the growth in labor activities. So several key factors have contributed to this development particularly. So what are those factors? So one of the most important factor that has contributed to the increasing labor productivity is work from home. So we all know that because of the COVID-19 pandemic, because of the lockdowns that were imposed to contain the spread of the disease, work from home has started. Okay, so since the COVID-19 pandemic, so this has resulted in a higher labor activity and resultant productivity. Now what happens is that because of the COVID-19 pandemic and work from home, the employees have more time to also look for the other work. So because of this reason, the productivity has further increased. And particularly because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the edtech and other digitally driven platforms or the fields have also developed rapidly, and they have seen a rapid development. So they have flourished at the same period and have contributed to the higher labor activity. So that subsequently increased productivity and resulted in higher economic growth. So in a nutshell, the COVID-19 pandemic is the mostly responsible for this, both work from home and also giving flourishing growth to edtech and other digitally driven fields. So apart from that, the government has also taken a number of initiatives. Okay, so initiatives taken by the government in launching several important schemes, such as the Skill India program that were launched by the government. So this Skill India program is aimed at upskilling of the existing workforce and also encouragement to the startup ecosystem in India. So in order to encourage startups and entrepreneurship culture, so government has launched the Startup India program. So in order to upskill and reskill people, the government has launched the Skill India program. So this has resulted in the creation of a skilled and well-equipped workforce in India. Okay, so these are the other factors also that have contributed to the economic growth because of increasing labor productivity. So the reinstatement of the economic activities after nearly 2 years of COVID-induced lockdowns has led to the increased labor activity and the labor productivity. Okay, so apart from this, there were several initiatives can be taken to create a growth pattern that ensures creation of jobs without compromising the labor productivity. Now this question has two parts. We have addressed so far the first part of the question, and the second part of the question says how can we create more jobs without compromising the labor productivity. So first and foremost, we need to focus on the manufacturing sector. Okay, so manufacturing sector in terms of the labor intensive industries should be the focus area. The labor intensive industries, the MSME sector, startups, they should be promoted to ensure that there should be a proper creation of adequate number of jobs without compromising the labor productivity. So after that, government through capital expenditure. So when government spends more on the infrastructure projects, for example roads, railways, highways, such infrastructure expenditure, government can create more and more jobs. So that ensure the labor productivity is not actually compromised. Okay, this is the second way that through which we can ensure that the labor productivity is not compromised. So after that, we should talk about the programs for the upskilling and reskilling of the workforce. So this is also very important, through which we can improve the productivity and the capability of our existing workforce. Okay, so through upskilling of our existing workforce, the government increase recruitment in a financially prudent manner. So after that, the focus is on automation and introduction of new and efficient technologies. For example, we can use this as a method of maintaining the labor productivity and ensuring the proper economic growth. So the effort should be made to bring those sections of the population into the mainstream. For example, if you look at the Indian economy, we have the informal workforce, the unorganized sector presence. So the focus should be on bringing this workforce into the formal sector and making the unorganized sector economy into the organized sector economy, so that the contribution of the labor activity can be effectively measured, and that further gives a fillip to the economic growth of our country. So we have addressed both parts of the question, and in the conclusion, so you just have to stress on the necessity of creating more and more jobs. Okay, so thus increased labor productivity and resultant increase in the productivity and economic growth are two important features of the post-pandemic economic recovery. Now, after the pandemic, the economic recovery is very important. Now, India has become the fastest growing major economy in the world. Not even China, US are growing at a pace. Now, India is been growing. So in this context, the post-pandemic economic recovery is very crucial for a country like India. So therefore, in this context, the labor activity and the labor productivity and the resultant economic growth are very important aspects. So the economic growth pattern that ensures the continuation of all these things is very important for India going beyond, because we have the goal of becoming the $5 trillion economy. We have the goal of becoming $5 trillion economy by 2024. So therefore, in this context, it is very important. So the next question that we are going to discuss is about the India's renewable energy needs. So do you think India will meet 50% of its energy needs from the renewable energy by 2030? So if you remember this first statement is from India's Panchamrit commitments. So India has made certain commitments at the Glasgow summit. So this is one of that commitment. So the commitment is India will meet 50% of its energy needs from the renewable energy by 2030. So apart from this commitment, India also have several other commitments like becoming net zero by 2070, and India will achieve 500 gigawatt of energy from the non-fossil fuel resources. India will reduce the carbon intensity of our economy, okay, reducing the carbon emissions, etc., part of the Panchamrit commitments. So therefore, this is the first part of the question. And the second part of the question, so how will the shift of subsidies from fossil fuels to renewables help in achieving the above mentioned objective? So we all know that the government of India has been providing huge subsidies for the fuel. So in this context, what about shifting these subsidies to the renewable energy generation? So how will this help achieve the above mentioned goal of achieving 50% of its energy needs from the renewable energy? Now if you look at this image, this pie chart here, so around 60% of the total energy is generated from the coal alone, thermal power plants. So after that, around 12% of our energy requirements are met through the renewables. So that includes wind, solar and other bioenergy needs. So therefore, how can we make this renewable energy 50% by 2030? Okay, so 50% almost like this. Okay, now in the introduction itself, you have to briefly define the Panchamrit commitments, and 50% of the renewable energy will be through 50% of our energy demand is through renewable sources. Now, in order to combat climate change, India has set certain ambitious targets or ambitious goals. So one such goal is achieving net zero by 2070. As I have told you that becoming net zero is one such goal India has announced by 2070. So apart from that, India has also announced the Panchamrit or 5-point strategy. Okay, so the 5-point strategy of India includes meeting 50% of its energy demand, which is 500 gigawatt from the renewable sources by 2030. So this is one such goal as part of the 5-point strategy. So therefore, this would be considered as world's largest expansion plan of renewable energy. So far, no country has such an ambitious plan to adopt or make a transition to renewable energy. Now, first part of the question, asking that do you think that India can achieve 50% of its energy needs from the renewable energy? So yes, India could achieve this, but India have to follow certain things. Firstly, if you look at the total renewable energy, installed renewable energy, it is around 150 plus gigawatt. Okay, so this is around 150 plus gigawatt. So this data is from as of 31st August 2022. So this 150 plus gigawatt of renewable energy includes large hydropower, solar, wind and other things. Okay, So they have the combined installed capacity of around 163 gigawatt. So secondly, the government along with the private sector and the state governments have established around 59 solar parks with the total installed capacity of 40 gigawatts. Okay, so this was approved by India. Okay, so this is going to set up in India. So introduction of sovereign green bonds also. So through sovereign green bonds, the money which is raised will be used for renewable energy infrastructure development. Okay, so the government has also launched the sovereign green bond scheme. These are in order to finance the public sector renewable energy generation projects. So if you look at some data, by 2021, 165 gigawatt of zero carbon generation had already been installed in the country. So if we can go at this pace, we can certainly achieve the 50% target, 50% renewable energy target. So apart from that, the Central Electricity Authority, so that has focused that the country's overall reliance on coal, we have excessively dependent on coal. For example, we have been generating around 22%, 62% of its total electricity through thermal power plants alone. So that the Central Electricity Authority has predicted that so the dependency on coal would reduce to 53% of the installed capacity in 2021 and 33% in 2030. So our overall dependence on coal would likely decrease. So whereas solar and wind together makes up around 51% by then, so up from 23% in 2021. Okay, so you can observe a marked shift in dependence on coal, and also there's an increase in the renewable energy generation capacity. Okay, so because our dependence on solar and wind energy would be expected to increase to 51% from 23%. So wind power generation capacity in India, India is the fourth largest total installed capacity of the wind. So therefore, in this context, India will be achieving the target of 50% of renewable energy generation. Now in this context, we need to understand the challenges as well. So what are the challenges for India to meet 50% of its energy needs from the renewable energy by 2030? So what are the challenges that India is going to face? So the first challenge is that India needs to massively scale up funding for the renewables. For example, we still have the financial constraints in order to achieve renewable energy to such a large scale. So therefore, in this context, India needs to massively scale up the funding for the renewables. Okay, so India require around 223 billion in investment to meet the global wind and solar capacity installations by 2030. Only then we can meet the 50% of its renewable energy target can be met. Okay, so this is a data from the Bloomberg. So secondly, the scaling up renewables in India faces regulatory, project and financing risks with the land acquisition payment delays. Now, if we wanted to set up any wind farms or solar projects, we require land. So land acquisition is one of the major problem. Apart from that, the payment delays is also another major problem. So the renegotiation of the power purchase agreements. So the state governments have inked the power purchase agreements with several private power producing companies. So the renegotiation of these power purchasing agreements to satisfy all stakeholders is also challenging, because this is kind of a disincentive for the private sector in order to come up or invest in the renewable energy generation. So these are the challenges that India have to look into in order to meet its target of 50% of its energy, meeting the target of 50% renewable energy by 2030. Now in this context, how will the shift of subsidies from fossil fuels to renewable help achieve the above objective? Okay, so the government of India has been providing subsidies. Now how will shift in subsidies from fossil fuels to these renewable help achieve the above objective? So firstly, it eliminate the usage of fossil fuel subsidies and put price on the carbon. So putting price on carbon is also very important, because that disincentivizes the consumers to use these fossil fuels. Okay, so India has cut subsidies and increased taxes on these fossil fuels. So fossil fuels include petrol and diesel. Okay, so therefore turning a carbon subsidy regime into a carbon taxation. So earlier India used to provide carbon subsidy. Now it has become carbon taxation, because the government of India has imposed taxes on these fossil fuels. Okay, so this has resulted in putting an effective price on these emissions. So apart from that, India has also increased the coal cess from 50 per ton to 100 per ton. So this is equivalent to the carbon tax of around US dollars $1 per ton. Secondly, set up an investment in energy efficiency. So investment in energy efficiency is also very important. So the Energy Conservation Act, so that was enacted in the year 2001 with the goal of reducing energy intensity of Indian economy. Okay, so Bureau of Energy Efficiency was set up as the statutory body 1st March 2002 at the central level to facilitate the implementation of the Energy Conservation Act. Okay, so after that we need to create conditions for phasing out coal. So since 62% of our total energy or electricity generation is from coal alone, we need to gradually create conditions so that we can phase out coal at a rapid phase, because see, there are several ambitious targets at the global level. So limiting global temperatures below 1.5 degrees Celsius. So that implies that by 2030 electricity generation from coal needs to be reduced by 45% compared to the today's levels. So after that we need to improve access to electricity and clean cooking. So this is also very important. Okay, so we need to improve access to electricity and clean cooking. For particularly, so India's massive Ujala LED bulb, for example, Ujala LED bulb program. So this is part of the energy conservation plan. Okay, so substantially increases the efficiency and also reduces the consumption of electricity. So this will reduce the emissions by 40 million tons annually, and electricity demand will also significantly reduced by this Ujala LED bulb program. So apart from that, swaps are already taking place at the national level. For example, the fossil fuel subsidies have declined while renewable investments are now greater than the investment in fossil fuel based energy generation. Since the government has imposed taxation on the fossil fuels, petrol and diesel, the private sector is looking to invest in the renewable energies. For example, Tata Power, Adani Green. So they have been focused on creation of a renewable energy and investing in the renewable energy projects, wind and solar. So in the conclusion itself, you have to be optimistic and hopeful that India will meet the 50% of energy will be met through the renewable energy resources. So that is how you need to conclude this answer. Okay, so that's all for today, and tomorrow also we will discuss few more questions. So please like the video if you really like our work, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.